Days when the Dukes weren't hazardous. She's only 17, made us curious. It was a carefree time. How about we jump back and rewind? We were living on Winger and a prayer. Just garbage pail kids with mullets and big hair. Let's open up another pack. Gen X wants their future back. Break out the denim jackets with faded band patches. Share memories, Polaroid captured. It's the Gen X marks, the spot portraits.
Greetings to my fellow Gen Xers and hopefully new non-Gen X listeners that I'm picking up as I'm going along here with the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast. I am your host, Joe Augustine. We are in the Wherever I May Roam studio today. If you've been following along with the podcast, a few episodes back, I had interviewed Ron Fresky of Babylon AD. And during the conversation I had with him, I inquired, what did the name Babylon AD stand for? And without getting into too much detail with Babylon AD's name, I had mentioned also another band's name during that episode of Sweet F.A. Now, that was a really awesome kick-ass band in the early 1990s. I went on a mission and I tried to find out what Sweet F.A. meant. And when I typed it into Google, it did come up that there was a band called Sweet F.A. and they were based out of originally the state of Indiana. Well, it really didn't tell us what Sweet F.A. meant other than there was a song called Sweet F.A. by the band Sweet, and there was an album by the band Love and Rockets called Sweet F.A. And I searched and I tracked down one of the original band members of Sweet F.A., and that was Brent Barker. So I was able to get him for a few minutes and talk to him about what Sweet F.A. meant. So we're going to hear about that and what Brent has been doing since he left Sweet F.A. before they got a record deal. There are a few songs on Sweet F.A.'s debut album, Stick to Your Guns, released in 1990, that he helped co-write. He's going to talk about that as well. And then in 2022, Sweet F.A. reformed and Brent came back to the band as the lead guitarist. How cool is that? So it all came full circle for Brent, and we're going to hear that conversation in just a few minutes. But first, before we get into the interview with Brent Barker of Sweet F.A., I want to thank Paul from, are you ready for this? Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania. Yes, there is such a town called Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania. Read into it all you want because, listen, no kidding, there are other towns in Pennsylvania, well, just make you go, Intercourse, Pennsylvania, Blue Balls, Pennsylvania, and Lover, Pennsylvania. I could not make this shit up. I just couldn't. And as a Gen Xer, I just want to give props to whoever runs those towns in the political form, mayor, councilmen, council ladies. Thank you for not changing those names because it gives us something to talk about and also kind of be proud of as a Gen Xer because we don't offend easily. And you know what? A lot of us Gen Xers, yes, we still have those dirty teenage minds. I know I do. Paul wrote in to say that for him, the 80s left a mark with him wearing members-only jackets and the 90s inflatable chairs. Paul? Yeah, I think I'm going to go down this road. Inflatable chairs. You mean like inflatable Felicia? I'm sorry. I had to say it. Bye, Felicia. For me nowadays, The only thing that is remotely close to members only jackets is if I buy something from Sam's Club, because you have to be a damn member to go there. And as for anything inflatable, I'll just say it's a pool float. We're good. We're good. Anyway, here's my interview right now with Brent Barker of Sweet F.A.
Yeah, so I was in a band with Steve DeLong, who's the singer of Sweet F.A., when I just turned 17. He was in a band. You know, I started playing live out there in Indianapolis. I'm from Indiana. Started playing live out there when I was 14, doing music professionally, and I ran into somebody that knew his band, which was called High Risk. They were looking for a guitar player, and I was younger than they were, but they were willing to give it a shot, so I joined them, and we were playing all of kind of the biggest places in Indiana. So we were playing like the Vogue Theater and the Starwood Country Club, and we were doing hard rock and metal covers, and we also had some originals, which were really good. And that band lasted a couple of years, and then a couple of members left, and Steve wound up joining another band called Thrust that was an even bigger kind of cover band. They were national, so they were touring the country, playing, you know, all over, doing hard rock and metal. And then he had a couple of operations on his voice because he was singing like 5-6 days a week, 3 hours a night, you know, that kind of thing. And so he wound up getting some vocal surgery, took some time off, and then he and I reconnected and said, you know, we should really be in a band together because we always had a really good chemistry, you know, writing together, playing together, on stage together. And so the first thing we did was form a kind of a power metal band called Renegade. I loved it. He didn't love it as much. He wanted to do more of kind of a blues rock kind of a thing. And then so we found Nick Lane, Tricky Lane, who was the drummer, and it was the three of us. It was me and Steve and him in Steve's basement. And the songs that we wrote then, you know, 4 of them made it onto the record, onto the debut album with Sweet F.A., which was Rhythm of Action, Whiskey River, I Love Women. So, you know, that was kind of the formation of the band. Then Jim came in, the bass player. And then I wound up leaving to pursue some opportunities in L.A. before the band actually, you know, got it to the goal line. They brought in a couple other guys, and then we've stayed friends, though, over the years. And I'm still in touch with Steve to this day. I just talked to him yesterday.
It wasn't too long ago that Sweet F.A. got back together, but he had a new lead singer.
Yeah, Patrick Stone. It was kind of odd that he's in Sweet and Sweet F.A., so that's kind of unusual.
Right.
He's a great guy, great front man, had a lot of fun on stage together, and, you know, did some good shows. And it was nice to be able to play those songs all those years later that started off in a basement and have people singing along to them. It was pretty wild, you know. People would still remember a band like that.
One of the things that I always wanted to know, and I Googled this and never really got an answer. What did Sweet F.A. mean?
Yeah, the name, it's a British term for sweet fuck all, which just means like, you know, you get nothing. You get sweet fuck all, you know, like
nice.
You know, you're talking to somebody who thinks they deserve more than they get. So it's kind of like a British term. So that's what it meant. That's where it came from.
Right now, I see that you also have a few projects going on. One is called Hard and Heavy.
Yeah, so that's the singer of that band was actually a student of mine. So I teach guitar. And he said after about a month's worth of lessons, you know, rather than have you as my guitar teacher, I think I'd rather have you as my guitar player. What would you think about doing a classic metal band? Oh yeah, sign me up, man. That's like, you know, the kind of music we're doing. It's everything I grew up on. So it's Judas Priest, Dio, Ozzy, you know, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer, Metallica. It's just all of that classic 80s, 90s metal.
Yeah, I see you're mostly out in the Arizona area.
That's right. That's right.
Do you think you guys might make it into anything more, like instead of just covers?
Definitely, yeah. We've got originals in the works, and they sound pretty fucking good. So it'll be coming.
I'm guessing you guys are trying to kind of coming into your own with your own sound.
We are, yeah. So it's not a dated sound. You know, we're not trying to kind of replicate the era from our covers. It sounds more modern than that. But it does have a little bit of that influence. But but modern metal, has a lot of kind of the death metal kind of growling type vocals, and ours has like singing, like what you would get from classic metal, but the music is heavier, like more like what you would hear in kind of today. So it's kind of like a bridge between the classic metal sounds and then modern metal sounds, and it's unique. It doesn't sound like anybody else. We're not, we're trying to kind of do our own things. So
Hopefully you'll be posting your social media sites.
yeah, it'll be coming about like early next year. So I mean, we've already started. They're in the writing process, and we'll be recording. Hope to record next month.
You've worked with some incredible musicians, Whitesnake, Montrose, Foreigner. How did those collaborations all come about?
Yeah, so I did a benefit at NAMM in 2017 or 2018, and there were just a whole bunch of great musicians on the bill, from well-known bands like Frank Hannon from Tesla was there, Doug Aldrich from Whitesnake was there, and the drummer, Chris Frazier, played in Whitesnake and currently plays for Foreigner, and he and I really kind of clicked when we played. We decided to do some recording together. And so we recruited a bass player named Brad Lang, who's been in a bunch of different bands as well. Did a little 6-song EP. That was awesome. I also wound up working with a drummer here in Phoenix on some additional instrumental music. And so he's played for Alice Cooper and Flotsam and Jetsam, a couple well-known bands. And then the bass player from Steve Vai's Generation Hacks was on bass, a guy named Pete Griffin. And so we're doing instrumentals as well. So, no vocals, kind of a like heavy metal jazz fusion is kind of like, what I'm into as far as that goes. So I've got like kind of my instrumental music that I like to do. And then I've got the band music that I do as well. I've done a lot of different things. It's kind of hard to keep track of them after a while, because a lot of times I'll do a recording project, like I'll be a hired gun. Mm-hmm. Like I just finished up lead guitar for an album coming out by the bass player from Fifth Angel. I don't know if you've heard of the band Fifth Angel, but
yeah, I have.
Okay, yeah, they're great. So I'm also in the videos for Fifth Angel's last record. They had a record called When Angels Kill. They put out a year or two ago, and so I'm in all the videos for that. And I wound up making a relationship with this bass player. So he has an album. It's just now coming out called 0 Point Machine. And so I'm playing on that. It is modern, kind of like Spirit Box meets Dream Theater. It's really, really interesting style. And then I did another record with a band called Desert Dragon out of LA that featured Keith St. John, who's the singer from the band Montrose and Kingdom Come. He sang with Kingdom Come for Bless. And so that has been out for a couple of years, and he and I also work on a project together, like his solo record, which will be coming out soon. So got a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak.
I know NAMM's coming up. So any plans on going back there and doing the Ronnie Montrose celebration? I think it's the 10th year, and I know Keith kind of puts all that together.
Keith puts it all together. That's right. Yeah. So I'll just have to wait and see how it goes. The guitar company that I'm with is Paul Reed Smith Guitars. Mm-hmm. So I'm a Paul Reed Smith artist, and they don't have a booth at NAMM. So
oh wow,
they just kind of opted out of that. So if they have a booth there, then it's more likely that I would go. Not sure about that yet. Have to stay tuned on that one.
We're kind of going to jump back a little bit to your early days back in Indiana. Who were some of your earliest musical influences growing up?
First, Ace Frehley from Kiss. That was before I played guitar, when I was like 8 or 9 years old. I mean, you got to just love the whole production around a band like Kiss, especially for a kid.
Yeah.
And then AC/DC, Angus Young. I just thought, that was just the coolest, heaviest band, that I knew of at that time. And then once I actually started playing guitar, I got really into Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, Yngwie, and there were some local players as well. Like, there was a guy that I was working with when I was a teenager, just kind of getting started teaching guitar at a music store in Broad Ripple, a guitar player named Rick Bennick, who was a big guitarist in the Indiana scene. He was with a band called Roadmaster. He was with Mitch Ryder, Henry Lee Summer. These are all like kind of Midwest bands. And I learned a lot just by kind of watching him, kind of how he did things and how he would get his sound, and just kind of seeing, how the pros do it, so to speak.
And speaking of Ace, when I seen that he had passed away, he, to me, and I had said this before, I discovered Fraley's Comet before I discovered Kiss.
Interesting.
Then I fell in love with Kiss. And, I told the story not too long ago that when Ace had passed away, my 10-year-old texted me while I was at work and said, Ace has died. And the craziest thing is we have a cat named Ace. And I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, are you okay? And how's mom? And, and then he's texting me back, well, mom doesn't really care, but I'm so upset. And I'm like, wait, what the hell is going on here? And then he was like, Dad, it's Ace Frehley. I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, so I'm praying, fingers crossed, we have a dog and we named it Cooper. So Alice is up there and he's one of my favorites too. So I don't want another text like that. We're losing so many of our legends right now that we grew up with in our generation.
And I don't see anybody really coming to fill those shoes. Like, who's going to fill a band like Kiss? There's no band out there as big as Kiss was. I mean, Kiss was just, they were everywhere.
They marketed themselves so well.
They did, yeah, they really did. And just the level of the show that they were put on, and, for the time, that they were doing it at. Yeah, just with the way music works now with streaming services, just nobody really makes that big of an impact, at least not new bands. All the legendary bands are still, out there doing their thing. But once they're gone, it's like, there's not another band out there as big as Kiss or as big as AC/DC was, or, Van Halen was, or Judas Priest, or, music's a lot more fragmented now. There's a lot of good music out there. It's just not making the impact that some of those big bands made, 80s and 90s.
I want my kids to experience what I did, be brought up on that type of music, and they actually love it. I felt at times I kind of forced that on them, and they were like, no, Dad, man. So I'm thankful for that, and I take them to see, as many bands as possible.
Yeah, and the younger generation is still going to the shows, and they like it. They recognize the authenticity and the genuine nature of that music. It's like there's no faking that stuff, man. It's like it's got to be in your DNA, and we were lucky to grow up in an era with legendary bands like that.
If I connect with a song, that song sticks with me forever. I was telling someone the other day too that I was so into the hair metal scene that I did not look beyond other bands until a little bit later when grunge came out. And that's when I started discovering bands like Sweet F.A. and hopefully I'm pronouncing the band's name right, Tangier.
Sounds familiar.
Different bands such as you guys, and Tesla's always been up there for me.
Oh yeah, still doing it to this day. Sound great.
Oh yeah. Jeff's vocals are still there, and Troy's not in the band anymore. I guess he's going out now with John Corabi.
Yeah, he's a great drummer, and that guy's a great singer. That ought to be pretty cool.
And that was another band, too, that I discovered right around the time he was joining Motley Crue, was The Scream.
You know about The Scream. Yeah, they were outstanding, man. They were killing it.
So I know we talked about you having Hard and Heavy in that project coming up. Anything else on the horizon that you're going to be working with, or anybody that you're going to be working with?
Well, I've got a Deep Purple tribute band out here as well called Deeply Purple. I've got my instrumental music that I'm writing, so I'm going to continue to put out kind of my own music that way, just take it from there. But I'm really excited about the Hard and Heavy music that's going to be coming out next year. That's going to be one of the highlights, I think, because I'm really proud of the music.
I wish you luck with Hard and Heavy. Any plans for another run with Sweet F.A.?
Not talking about anything as far as a run with Sweet F.A. However, I am working with the original singer, Steve DeLong. So he and I are actually working on music together. So I don't know what that'll ultimately become, whether it would be Sweet F.A. or we might call it something completely different because the music's a little different. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Hey, thank you so much, Brent. And that's my short and sweet F.A. interview with Brent Barker. You got it, short and sweet F.A. See what I did there? Yeah, it was bad. Sorry about that. It was great talking with Brent. He shared stories about the band's history, how he remained friends with those bandmates throughout the years, and new music he's working on with original frontman of Sweet F.A, Steve DeLong. Can't wait to hear what's going to happen with that. Maybe the reformation of Sweet F.A once again. We'll just have to wait and see. And if that's not enough, Brent is pouring all his energy right now into some of his own solo projects and a band he's currently in, Hard and Heavy. If you want to stay connected with Brent and keep up with his latest projects, you can find him on social media, Facebook at Brent Barker Music, also on Instagram and YouTube. Brent, thank you so much for joining me today on Gen X Marks the Spot podcast. Hopefully we can follow up sometime down the road and check out and see what's going on with you and Steve and Hard and Heavy. And Gen Xers, a big shout out, or I should say props to you for listening. Peace out. I'm Joe Augustine.
It's the Gen X